This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, now, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Tate, and today we will be talking about the Eastern Conference playoffs. We'll talk a little LeBron James. We'll talk a little bit about the All-NBA teams and how it really affected a lot of the other players and their salaries. But we start right off the top with the shocker that the Toronto Raptors have now gone up 3-2 on the Milwaukee Bucks. And I can't lie, this is a shocker to me. I am absolutely stunned. When we were last on air, we were talking about the fact that Milwaukee was up 2-0, and I said this statement, that Milwaukee had the better offense, they have the better defense, they have the deeper bench, and they have the better coaching. 3 games later, and it is now Raptors 3-2, I am utterly shocked. And this is the reason why NBA free agency is so important, because one guy can make that big of a difference. When you look at it, Milwaukee on paper, and not just on paper, but in the game, was literally better at every phase of the game. The only thing that I looked at that was even close was Giannis versus Kawhi, which I thought was a very close matchup. And then came Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5. And I give the credit to, the one thing I made the biggest mistake on is I said that Milwaukee was a better coach team, or had the better coach, because Nick Nurse has actually proven to be the better coach. And the reason why the Raptors have gone up and won 3 games in a row, which is the first time all season that the Milwaukee Bucks have actually lost 3 games in a row, hasn't happened all year. But it has just happened. Now they've lost 3 games in a row at the absolute worst time possible, which now means that they are literally 1 game away from being eliminated, and this season being an absolute failure. And the reason why that is strictly Nick Nurse and Kawhi Leonard. And the big adjustment has been, when you look at this game and what happened between the first 2 games and the big adjustment in Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5 is strictly this. Nick Nurse looked at the game and he realized what we have to do. So in the first 2 games, once the ball crossed half court, Giannis gets a nice head of steam. He drives to the hole, and he is absolutely unstoppable. By the time he gets to the paint, if you haven't slowed Giannis down, it's over. And he literally killed Toronto in the first 2 games. But what they did was, number one, they put Kawhi Leonard at crucial points in time in the game. They said, we're going to D up Kawhi on Giannis. The second thing is, whenever Kawhi was not on Giannis, they made sure to build a wall, double and triple team Giannis. And what they would do is they actually found Giannis's weakness. It's kind of like they figured Giannis out and exposed Giannis. And yes, I do use the word expose because Giannis has been exposed as having a weakness that he must. And I mean, it is mandatory that he fixes this weakness during the off season because Milwaukee is now beatable. It is something that will be exposed, maybe not in the regular season, but even will come up to haunt him. And if they make it to the finals or for next year when they make the playoffs. And that is the minute that Giannis crosses half court, between half court, 3-point line, or half court and the top of the key or foul line, they are either putting Kawhi on him or they're double or triple teaming him or they're putting a wall up, stopping Giannis from driving to the hole. They don't mind letting Giannis shoot a 13, 14, 15-footer or even a 10-footer because he has not been able to shoot those shots. He is not able to drain the shots at that 10+ foot range. And because of that, he's shooting at like a 30% clip, which is making him incredibly inefficient, which then is making the rest of the team, which has been traditionally a very deep team, they're being forced to either to bang the boards or get shots that are not in the optimal position. And quite frankly, Milwaukee's bench has not been able to make up the slack at all. The other players, it's just been Giannis. They stop Giannis from getting into the paint and making the easy bucket. He's forced to shoot a 10 or 13-footer. He misses, rebound, and Toronto is off to the races. The other thing that I find incredibly smart that Kawhi Leonard and Nick Nurse has done, and that is that when you look at this game and you look at the first quarter and you look at the second quarter, Kawhi is pacing himself. Kawhi, this shows that Kawhi has the experience from his experience of being in the finals and being a finals MVP, and all the trials and tribulations of him being in the playoffs with San Antonio. He has learned, and Nick Nurse knows what's going on there too, because they are pacing Giannis, not Giannis, but Kawhi Leonard in the first quarter, the second quarter. They're giving him quality rest in the third, so that when it comes time for the fourth quarter, you have a very strong and driven Kawhi Leonard. When you look at his 35 points, 15 points of that came in the fourth quarter. And then you have Fred VanVleet, who nailed 7 3-pointers. And this game is a wrap. And it all comes down to exposing Giannis, putting Kawhi on Giannis, pacing Kawhi Leonard and his time so that he's strongest in the fourth quarter. And that has been the recipe, which makes Giannis super ineffective, and it really puts Milwaukee in a bad place. Milwaukee has to figure out a way to counteract this. They don't have an off season. They don't have a lot of time to make that adjustment. And so this adjustment, either Giannis has to figure out how to get a shot in that 10, 15-foot range, a mid-range shot, or someone else is going to have to step up and make them pay. When they clog that middle and stop Giannis from being able to drive to the hole, Giannis has to be able to make the pass. And that's the one thing that has been exposed in Giannis's game. Giannis is not a great distributor. When you look at LeBron and you say, LeBron, this is why LeBron has been considered the best player in the NBA for a very long time, is the fact that LeBron can drive to the hole, he can make the mid-range shot, and he's just dangerous enough at three that you have to respect him. And on top of that, he can find the open man. Giannis is not finding the optimal position to find that open man, which is costing them really bad, because of the fact that he can't make that pass, or he's not making quality passes. It's leaving a lot of the bench players and a lot of the role players in bad places where they're making shots that they're not quite comfortable with, and it is causing problems. And because of that, Milwaukee, which should be considered favorite to win the whole thing this year, especially with Durant down and Boogie Cousins down and Iguodala injured, they are should be the clear favorites to win the whole thing. And quite frankly, they are one game away from being eliminated. With that, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to recap this, but then we're going to also roll into the fact that the NBA, all NBA teams were announced yesterday, and kind of how it affected Klay Thompson and what's going to happen to Klay in the future. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back, and in the last segment we were talking about how the Toronto Raptors have been able to go from 2 down to 3-2, and how they are one game away from making it to the NBA Finals. And the biggest thing is how Kawhi Leonard's defense has turned this whole series around, and how the Toronto Raptors have kind of exposed Giannis and what is his weak point, and exposed kind of his lack of passing and ability of a lack of a mid-range shot. And so that has really changed the whole direction of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals, and the thought that Milwaukee would be the team that could actually dethrone the Golden State Warriors. And now we're going to go sticking with the NBA. The NBA, all NBA teams were announced this week. And this is a really, really important award. And the reason why this is an important award, this is the most important award of any award that you can get. And yes, I even say more important than the MVP. If I'm a player, I want to be on the All-NBA team more than I want to be league MVP. And here's the reason why. Because it directly affects your value in the NBA. If you are named to an All-NBA team, you are now eligible for the Supermax. And that makes a big difference. That's an extra $10 million a year in salary that it could work out to. And for instance, for like Kemba Walker, his salary now that he's gonna be a free agent, because he's made it to that All NBA team, it could work out to like about an extra $85 million change in salary for him. So the first team All NBA team went to Giannis, James Harden, Steph Curry, Paul George, and Nikola Jokic. I always have a hard time with his name. The second team was Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyrie Irving. The third team was Russell Westbrook, Blake Griffin, LeBron James, which I believe this meant for the first time in 11 or 12 years, I believe it's 11 years, that LeBron was not named to the first team All NBA. He was actually named to the third team, which snapped his streak. You had Rudy Gobert, and you have Kemba Walker. And the reason why this is important and why this is brought up, because there's one name that is missing from this list, and that is Klay Thompson from the Golden State Warriors. And I'm sorry, you're looking around, and most people would say that Klay is clearly one of the top 6 point guards in the NBA, one of the top 6 most valuable point guards in the NBA. But because he is not named to the NBA All NBA team, this is literally a $30 million loss for him. And it was very obvious that he was not happy about this. When you look around and and the big reason why he was not named comes down to when you're on a team like Golden State, where you have superstar after superstar after superstar, you have to give something up. And this year, his game suffered because of how many great players are around him. When you look at this and you say Steph Curry was first team, Kevin Durant was second team, a lot of the voters, which were actual sports writers, wasn't comfortable giving a Steph Curry a first team, a Durant a second team, and a Klay a third team. I think a lot of people were just kind of like, you know what? The lesser of three evils is not to put Klay on the team, to not vote Klay in. But with that being said, because I think he clearly deserves to be I would have put him in as a second, worse, a third team All NBA type player. But when you look at it, and he is now, because of this, he goes into free agency and he is not eligible for the Supermax. And what that means is, yes, $30 million, but to give it out in terms, at the Supermax, he was expected to get a 5-year contract at $220 million. Now, that's $220 million that he was going to get. Now you're looking at a 5-year contract for about $190 million. I know that's both of them are just a nice batch of cheddar to get, but losing $30 million or almost $10 million a year, $8 to $10 million a year as a loss, that's a lot of money. And I would not be happy about that whatsoever, because I clearly think he deserves to be on the All-NBA team. I don't like the fact that the NBA makes it so that sports writers are the one who determines who is going to be on an All-NBA team, because you have a situation where if you have a player that you are tight with and you look around and this guy always gives you an interview, this guy's always nice to you, this guy always takes you out to lunch, goes out to dinner with you every once in a while when you're in town, you're more likely to vote your buddy in instead of the guy that doesn't give you the time of day, doesn't give you the interview. And that is literally affecting the value of a player and his salary. It also affects later on how, your eligibility to go to the Hall of Fame. When you look around and you say, okay, does he have an MVP? How many all NBA teams has he made? Well, this is definitely one less all NBA team that Klay is going to make. And that changes a lot. It's definitely going to change his free agency, but it also changes and makes Golden State even more dangerous. And the reason why it makes Golden State more dangerous is the fact that, let's just say in free agency, Klay resigns with Golden State, which most likely he's going to. And let's say Durant goes to New York, like a lot of people are talking. Because of the fact that Durant leaves and Klay did not get the Supermax, Golden State's going to have an extra $40 to $60 million to play with, in which they're still going to be able to sign some additional players to make them they're going to still stay dangerous as far as contending for championships. Because of this move that Klay is not going to get the Supermax and he's not eligible for that extra $30 million, that $30 million makes it so that Golden State has a little bit more firepower as far as this offseason if they lose Kevin Durant. Now, if they sign Kevin Durant, they're going to give that money to Kevin, and there isn't a lot more money left over. But if Durant leaves, and the fact that Klay has that money that he's not going to get, it does open up the door for Golden State to sign another player, considering they're coming off of making their fifth straight finals by taking out Portland, by sweeping Portland, which was a lot easier than a lot of people thought, including myself. So it makes it so that Golden State is a very attractive place to go for maybe that second tier type player. It also opens up the door so that maybe Boogie Cousins can come back as well. But when we come back, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Lakers and their situation and LeBron James. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back, and we just finished talking about the All-NBA team and how by missing it, it's going to actually cost Klay Thompson about $30 million, and how that is going to change the face of NBA free agency. Speaking of NBA free agency, the Lakers are back in the news. And they're back in the news, and the Lakers and LeBron James are both back in the news for a couple of reasons. The first thing is, as you know, Lakers have been pretty much known as kind of this crazy dumpster fire that's been going on ever since Magic Johnson left the Lakers. The unceremonious departure of the greatest Laker of all time. Without any notice, without telling his boss, and then the whole fact that he went on to First Take, and I felt like he really set fire to the Lakers organization by talking about how Rob Pelinka was actually stabbing him in the back and saying a lot of things behind his back, and how he was getting reports of what Rob Pelinka was saying, and how people in the office was telling him how the Rob was saying things, and how trusted friends was telling him about Rob Pelinka, and how other agents was telling him, hey man, don't trust Rob Pelinka. Watch out for Rob Pelinka. And then the fact that he had no real power when it came to firing the coach or getting rid of Rob Pelinka. And I truly think that Magic wanted to get rid of Luke Walton and Rob Pelinka and bring his own people in. With that being said, Magic steps down, and the Lakers have pretty much decided that they're not going to replace him as far as president of basketball operations, and how they're going to go ahead and keep Rob Pelinka as general manager. And a couple of things have come out. The first thing is that it came out that that the Lakers never reached out to Jerry West, one of the greatest general managers, the Lakers' greatest general manager, the Lakers' greatest front office executive ever, and they don't reach out to him. But now it recently comes out that maybe the best general manager in all of basketball, Pat Riley, that the Lakers didn't even contact him either. And Pat openly admits that he would have been intrigued. He would have listened to the Lakers because he has a home in the Los Angeles area. He has a bunch of classic cars at his home, and he doesn't get to hang out and drive those cars very often. And he wants to retire in Los Angeles. So he was definitely very open to listening to what the Los Angeles Lakers has to say, and they did not even give Pat Riley or Jerry West a call. And I personally think that is a colossal mistake. The Lakers, when you look at what's going on with Magic and what happened with this past season and what happened with the coach and how the coach was hired in and everything that is going on and all the news that is coming out, free agency, this is a very important free agency, not to mention what happened with the botched attempt to get Anthony Davis. So the Lakers are not looking good. So I think it was really important to bring in a quality front office, and the Lakers passed on two of the best. And pretty much you're looking at the role of, let's say, team president of basketball operations. It sounds like it's going to be Jeannie Buss, Linda Rambis, Kurt Rambis as the team that is going to be president of operations. General manager is going to be Rob Pelinka, with Rob picking up some extra duties. And it looks like, I think, first a lot of people were talking about how is LeBron going to handle this. But it is starting now to get out that LeBron is taking matters into his own hands as far as recruiting players. It has now come out that LeBron has been aggressively recruiting Kawhi Leonard, and Jimmy Butler. And I tell you what, if he was able to pull that off, if you put Kawhi with the way he's playing with Jimmy Butler and LeBron, that's an instant team that is going to contend for a championship. Another thing that came out recently was the fact that there was a picture of Kyrie Irving in a Lakers uniform, and everyone's made a big deal over the fact that LeBron James actually liked the post, liked by King James. LeBron is out there recruiting, and he is smart. He hasn't given up the shot of trying to put together a team. Right now, the biggest asset that the Lakers have is LeBron James. And they would be smart to get out there and have LeBron talk to as many players as humanly possible, because this is going to be a very tough offseason. When you start looking at who's available of the players, first off, Kevin Durant, no interest in joining LeBron and the Lakers. You have Kawhi Leonard, which it's been spoke that he fancies going to the Clippers. But I do think there's an outside chance that Kawhi could go to Los Angeles. Don't be surprised, though. I look at it and I say he's not going to go to the Clippers. And I look at it as Los Angeles, the Lakers, or Toronto, with, I think now with what's going on with the playoffs and the fact that they have a true shot at making the finals, I look at it and I say Kawhi is going to stay in Toronto. You have Kyrie Irving, which people are talking about him going to the Knicks. That is I think personally, you're most likely to actually rejoin LeBron in Los Angeles. Klay Thompson, free agent. He's already lost $30 million. He's not going to sign the contract for even less money to go play for the Lakers. He is going nowhere. Kemba Walker, now the Charlotte Hornets can actually pay him the supermax. I don't know if they're going to do that, but right now I have not heard anything about him going anywhere else. He is an undersized guard. I don't know is he really worth the money to give supermax or a max contract? I say no. You have Jimmy Butler, one person that LeBron has been going aggressively after. Tobias Harris is another person who is available. And one guy that I do think would be a real possibility is Boogie Cousins. Boogie, I think the Lakers could pull off a situation where, and it hasn't been talked about, where you look around and you have a situation where Kyrie comes and they, for a little less money coming off of injury, they get Boogie Cousins to come over. I think that's the most likely situation than going out and getting, a Kawhi Leonard. I look at it maybe a Kyrie, Boogie Cousins kind of mix as an option more than being able to pull in a Kyrie and a Kawhi Leonard. So with that, we're gonna wrap things up and get one other thing that when we talk about that whole trade and the Lakers trade, one thing that has kind of came out is with as far as the Lakers, we talked about the fact that David Griffin has denied not having the right to go ahead and trade Anthony Davis from New Orleans to the Lakers. But one of the things, there was an interview with David Griffin of the New Orleans Pelicans, and he's vice president of basketball operations, and he talked about the fact that he has not given up the concept of having Zion and Anthony Davis play together. He still hasn't given up that hope, even though Anthony Davis has made it very clear that he is not open to coming back. Now, with that, I think that Golden State is a little delusional, and they're going to have to make a move before the draft. Not after the draft. After the draft, you lose all leverage. So they're going to have to do the trade, whether he goes to New York, whether he goes to Boston, whether he goes to Los Angeles, wherever he's going to go, it must be done before the draft. All right, we're going to go on a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little NFL. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys situation, and should they pay him all that cash. Stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. And the last segment, we were talking about the Lakers and LeBron James, possible free agency. And we have been talking way too much NBA lately. It's time to dive into a little bit of NFL. And when you're starting to talk about NFL, you got to go straight to America's team. And the question is, should the Cowboys pay Dak Prescott the money of a top-tier quarterback? And, you know, first off, I'm a Cowboys fan. And with that being a Cowboys fan, all last year I have been saying, no, do not pay him the money. You pay him the money, and you are stuck with Dak Prescott for a very long time, and he hasn't proven to be a top-tier quarterback. You're talking about $25, $30, $33 million for Dak Prescott. And I've been saying that consistently for the last year. No, don't do it. Well, I'm here to tell you I have changed my mind. I have absolutely, positively changed my mind. And the reason why I have changed my mind when it comes to should you pay Dak Prescott like a top-tier quarterback is the fact that when you look at Dak and you say, as long as Dak has quality players around him, he plays very well. And if the Cowboys are planning on taking care of Amari Cooper and they have at least minimum 2 more years with Dak, with Ezekiel Elliott, and with the possibility of re-signing him or franchise tagging him for that 3rd year, you start looking around and you look at Dak Prescott, and I have changed my whole mind where not only do you sign him for that money, but you get it done immediately. Do not let this calendar year, this season start with Dak Prescott not having a contract. Because here's the reason why. When you start looking at what some of the quarterbacks are getting, and if you wait another year, you're going to have a situation where you're going to look at some of these other quarterbacks that are coming in, and that lower tier quarterback is going to be getting $25 to $30 million. You're going to look at guys like Kirk Cousins, and there's going to be a lot more Kirk Cousins contracts coming up sooner than later. And when you look at it, yes, that pill may seem like a big thing to handle right now, but when you look at 3-4 years down the road, and you look at who are the quarterbacks and what they're getting paid, whoever pays their quarterback now, they're going to be getting that contract. Is going to be a much more stable contract in the future. You're looking at guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and Big Ben. Big Ben just got his. Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. These guys are going to get paid, and they're all going to drive that medium range quarterback salary up, because there is going to be new records. The standard price for a top tier quarterback is going to be in that $30 million range within a year or two. You go in, you sign Dak Prescott for $25-30 million right now. That sounds like a lot. But when you start looking at over the next few years, $30 million is something that you can live with. And so I'm locking him up now. Not only if I was the Cowboys, I would definitely lock up Dak Prescott. But when I start looking at another team in that division in the NFC East, I say the same thing with Carson Wentz. The minute that Dak Prescott's contract is settled, if I'm the Eagles, I'm signing Carson Wentz to a little bit more. You lock Carson Wentz up, and the big question is, can Carson Wentz stay healthy? And do you really want to take a chance on waiting a few years? If Carson Wentz goes in this season and he makes this whole season without getting injured, Carson Wentz will be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. If you sign him now, you can get him at a little bit of a discount. You wait. He comes off of another season, a great season, which he has the potential to do, to have an amazing season. And now you're looking at paying the high end on a quarterback, as in looking at maybe the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That kind of a contract can cripple a team and make you have to cut a lot of quality players. You do not want that type of a situation. So, with that being said, Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, they are a must-sign. Both are must-sign players before the season kicks off. You do not let either one of these guys go into next season without a contract. I just want to get that in. With that, once again, I am your host, Tate, and to all, have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.